Have you heard the name William B. Ide? Few Californians recognize that name, and yet William Ide was the first president of California. His story starts out like that of thousands of other California pioneers. The Ide family decided to travel to the Western Territory. They joined a wagon train following the Oregon Trail. William Ide, his wife, 5 children, a dog, and a small herd of cattle, breeding stock, to set up ranching. From Oregon, William Ide decided to follow the Humboldt River and ended up settling south of Red Bluff in the Sacramento River Valley. He purchased 30,000 acres of rangeland. Our story begins about a year later. It's a warm May day. Wildflowers cover the hillsides. Ide's out working in the fields, and Mrs. Ide and her son are weeding the garden next to the house. Suddenly, a horse and rider gallop through the wooden gates of the Ide ranch. Mrs. Ide smiles and calls out a greeting to the tall man dressed in tailored buckskins. The man dismounts and runs over to the garden. He's very upset. And after a short exchange, Mrs. Ide turns to her son. Zachary, go fetch your father." The boy jumps up on a small pinto pony and rides off. In a few minutes, William Ide came riding up. He listened to the man for a minute and then said, "I'm with you. I'll go get my rifle." When Ide came outside with his rifle, he ran over to his wife. "I have to go away for a while. Take care of everything. I won't be gone long." Ide had no idea that it would be 7 months before they were together again. 7 months filled with adventure and an extraordinary swing of fortune in his life. 7 months that left an indelible imprint on the fate and history of the state of California. Lieutenant John C. Fremont, explorer and U.S. Army officer, had just arrived in California with his small company of soldiers. California was under Mexican rule, and Fremont was determined to take California away from Mexico and make it part of the United States of America. Recently, military leader General Castro had let it be known that American settlers were no longer welcome in the California Territory. Rumors were flying that General Castro was now planning to raid the American settlers, to confiscate their property. That's what the tall man had discussed with Ide before they rode off. As they rode along, other men ready to defend their homes and property against General Castro joined up with them, and another group of men were waiting for them in Marysville. When they were all together, the men began to debate what were the available alternatives. They all agreed they wanted to be part of the United States of America. No one wanted Mexico laying down their laws. What would be the best way to handle this intolerable situation? Some thought they should try negotiation, and if it was necessary, litigation. Others argued, "That's a waste of time. We need to take the offensive." The men rode on to Sonoma, the capital of the northern section of Mexican California. That's where General Vallejo, the commander of the Mexican northern outpost, lived. Again, they debated what should they do. Finally, they decided on a plan. And so it happened that at dawn on the 14th of June, 1846, this small American army crept up to the plaza. They drew lots to see who would go to General Vallejo's house and demand his surrender. William Ide was not among the small group of men who drew those lots and who bravely rode to the general's house and pounded on his door. "Let us in! Let us in! We want to see the general!" It was dawn, and General Vallejo was still in bed. The pounding and shouting woke him up. When the general's servants finally ushered the men in, General Vallejo was waiting. He was standing at full attention in his dress uniform. In solemn grandeur, he drew his sword and put it on the table, the symbolic gesture of surrender. There was silence. The men quite frankly, didn't know what to do. Should they take the sword? Acknowledge it in some way? They looked at each other, confused. The general politely pushed the sword aside and ordered brandy and wine. Then the weary conquerors began to drink, and drink, and drink. Meanwhile, out in the street, the rest of the men were waiting, wondering what was happening. They sent another man to report back, and when he didn't return, they waited some more, and then sent another man, and another. As fate would have it, William Ide was the last man to step inside Vallejo's house, and cold sober, he accepted Vallejo's resignation. And as a result, Ide was elected by the other ranchers and farmers president of the new Republic of California. Ide's first official act was to issue a proclamation. Citizenship was to be open to all. Everyone would be equal in this new state. Then Ide ordered a flag. But what should it look like? Well, one of the fellows from Texas suggested putting a star on the flag. Others wanted a grizzly bear. This was at a time when there were hundreds of grizzly bears in California. And they agreed that a bear was a good symbol. But some wanted the bear standing upright on 2 feet, and others wanted him solidly planted on all 4s. Well, finally they agreed on a design, and the flag was sewn, probably from muslin flour sacks. In the Sonoma Plaza, it was hoisted with great revelry and celebration. After raising the flag and celebrating their victory, William Ide led this ragged army of homesteaders to Fremont to report the news of this successful revolution. Fremont was delighted. However, he didn't take the election of William Ide very seriously. After all, he was the appropriate leader, a trained and disciplined military man, so Fremont quickly assumed command. He ordered the men to march with him to Los Angeles. Since Fremont didn't have a horse, Ide gave him his horse to ride. Fremont rode Ide's horse to Los Angeles, and William Ide, without a horse, walked. After reporting their successful revolution in Los Angeles, the men returned to their families. However, Ide had no money with him, and so he had to work his way up the coast. On the Sacramento River, he was doing labor on a small ship when one of the crew asked, "Say, aren't you the William Ide I've heard about? The first president of California?" "Yes, I am," Ide replied. And when this was reported to the ship's captain, Ide had free passage the rest of the way. Shortly afterwards, Mexico ceded California to the United States, and William Ide's term as first president of the Republic of California was terminated. But capricious Lady Luck wasn't finished with William Ide. Shortly after the Bear Flag Revolt, he and his sons struck gold, and the ranch was paid off. No one knows exactly what happened next. Smallpox may have wiped out Ide's family. All we know is that 7 years after the Bear Flag Revolt, Ide, sick with smallpox, no longer had his ranch. He was living alone in a little cabin near Monroeville. He'd been hired to take care of the county safe. One night, thieves broke in and stole the county's money and took everything Ide had as well. A posse caught the thieves, but Ide's personal savings were never returned, and he died shortly afterwards. Historians suspect William Ide's contemporaries never took him very seriously. They've been unable to find a picture of William Ide, or even a description of what he looked like. If you're in Red Bluff, you can visit his old house. It's right on the riverbank, the William B. Ide Adobe. William Shakespeare wrote, "Some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them." William Ide had his moment in the spotlight, a place in the history of California. And that's the story of William Ide, the first president of the Republic of California.